The following readings are from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. Each week we read from both scriptures as prescribed by Yoganandaji and by his guru Sri Yukteswarji, who was guided by Babaji to compare the two scriptures to show the same underlying truths between them. This week's reading is entitled, Why Do Devotees Fall? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The Bhagavad Gita gives a graphic explanation of how easily the mind can be drawn downward once it begins to feed on wrong attitudes. In the second chapter, Sri Krishna states, "That man alone is wise, of understanding, steadfast, and unwavering, whose senses are obedient to his discrimination. If one ponders on sense objects, there springs up attraction to them. From attraction grows desire. Desire, impatient for fulfillment, flames to anger. From anger there arises infatuation, the delusion that one object alone is worth clinging to the exclusion of all others. From infatuation ensues forgetfulness of the higher self. From forgetfulness of the self follows degeneration of the discriminative faculty. And when discrimination is lost, there follows the annihilation of one's spiritual life." The downward road described here is followed by people who are not calmly centered in the self within, allowing their desires to slide unchecked down slippery paths of sense pleasure and ambition. The Gita's warning describes varying stages of the descent into spiritual oblivion. At whatever point one finds himself on this downhill journey, he should redirect his steps upward toward cosmic consciousness. For never in the other direction can he find the fulfillment he himself is seeking from life. Unfortunately, the farther one slips into delusion, the less he is likely to retain even the desire to reform. Those who live in ignorance have no spiritual life to annihilate. Unaware of the divine self within, they fall a prey to all kinds of delusion. Brooding ceaselessly on the objects of the senses, they become increasingly attracted to them, to the point even of wanting things which the healthy mind rejects as despicable. Maddened by desire, they lose all sense of proportion. Impatient to achieve their fancied fulfillment, they may willingly sacrifice lifelong friendships, their own and future security, and the respect of everyone they know in their eagerness to get what they want. Fortunately, not many people sink so far into the depths, but manage to pull out of their tailspins before losing their discrimination altogether. In such people, then, the disease of spiritual ignorance assumes a less virulent form. What few realize is that, even if they manage to avoid plunging to their destruction, life forever confronts them with a radical choice: the upward path to God consciousness and the downward into spiritual darkness. To fail to choose rightly is to fail anyway. For mankind is ever called from within to tread the way of enlightenment. If anyone instead rejects life's higher goals, he may retain a superficial hold on morality, but he will end up slipping into the ditch of spiritual stagnation all the same. The road to hell, it has been well said, is paved with good intentions. Virtue is not founded on passive goodness, but on an active aspiration toward perfection. One who fails to enter energetically into the upward flow of evolution finds his spiritual faculties eventually atrophying. The pull of delusion is far stronger than most people realize, and the way to victory is not to close one's eyes to this pull while pretending that it doesn't exist. Rather, it is to live consciously in the thought of God's presence within, to meditate daily and deeply, and to offer one's life up unceasingly as a channel for divine energy, love, and joy. Implicit in this warning of the Bhagavad Gita is a concomitant promise. For when a person concentrates on spiritual ideals, he finds himself increasingly attracted toward them. From this attraction grows the desire to live by them. The desire to live spiritually develops into an intense yearning for God. Such divine yearning flames to impatience with anything that might prevent one from realizing Him. From this impatience with lesser realities arises total absorption in the consciousness of God. From such absorption ensues forgetfulness of the senses. And from sense forgetfulness arises indifference to worldly modes of thinking and behaving. Estrangement from worldly consciousness results in complete annihilation of delusion. Such is the ascending road. The other, to which the ignorant are attracted like water drawn into cavern depths, sweeps them down into ego bondage. But the upward road leads to eternal freedom. The fundamental difference between these two ways is that matter attraction, unlike the pull of the spirit, is one-sided. Material objects remain unconscious of the affection people pour out to them. Indeed, only love that is offered to God is ever truly requited. The Infinite Beloved responds tenderly to the least effort on our part to commune with Him. The secret of fulfillment, as the Bhagavad Gita hints here, is to reverse our direction from the world of the senses to that of the indwelling spirit. As an example of a devotee who falls, an endlessly fascinating question is, why did Judas fall after receiving the extraordinary blessing of being accepted into the inner circle of Jesus Christ's disciples? For Judas was one of the 12 apostles. Yet he betrayed Jesus and earned for himself the opprobrium of Christendom for all futurity for his sin. We find Judas reprimanding Jesus just days before that betrayal. Jesus, aware that his disciples would soon be facing with his death the supreme tragedy of their lives, allowed Mary to express her devotion by anointing his feet with costly ointment. The ointment was jadamansi. This act of wanton waste, as Judas saw it, awakened indignation in that disciple. Why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? This he said, the Bible says, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and kept the purse and bare what was put therein. Then said Jesus, Let her alone. Against the day of my burying hath she kept this. For the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always. Doubt not the power of delusion. Respect it. Indeed, fear it, though not in the sense of cowering before it. For, as Yogananda said, one is not safe until he attains nirvikalpa samadhi, the state of final union with God. Judas, through attachment to money, opened his consciousness to subtle influences, which may be called satanic, that drew his thoughts toward other related attitudes, the importance of worldly power, for instance, and of worldly influence. At the first thought of delusion, Paramahansa Yogananda said, that is the time to stop it. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
I wanted to talk about this reading. It's quite a daunting title, isn't it? How do devotees fall? Of course, we all go, oh my God, I hope I'm not falling. I hope I don't fall. I think that is in all of us to worry about. Am I doing the right things? At least those who are sincere probably worry too much. Those who think, oh my gosh, I had the wrong thought, or I missed my meditation today. There's a lot of anxiety that can happen for someone who really wants to do the straight and narrow path on the spiritual path. And a lot of that is with good intentions. But as soon as we do things with tension, which it's interesting how intention has the word tension in it. But as soon as we do things with tension, then we're just not going to be able to reach the goals we want. We're not going to be able to meditate and have any kind of results. We're not going to be able to open our hearts. All of these things have to come with relaxation, but also energy that goes up the spine. And so, one of the basic problems that I'll address today is energy level. I think for most people I've seen in the ups and downs over the past 30 years on the spiritual path, it has to do with energy level. People will first come and they'll be very enthusiastic and they'll get a lot of energy from being here. And then over time, it kind of drags on. And it's because they're not necessarily getting the results they want from their meditation. But Master said, even just a little drop of meditating will open the door for self-realization now or in future lives. And so he said, once that door is opened, not in a superficial way, like I meditated once, okay, now my door is open. He said, once the door is opened with a true guru-given technique, that you've opened that door. And even if you've practiced for quite a while and then suddenly life and karma takes you in another direction, you've always opened that door so that in future lives, the door can be opened again. Now, that's not what most of us are satisfied with. We don't want that door to just be open only. We want to go through that door. And this takes continual upping of our energy. You can't just have your energy at a certain level, your enthusiastic, happy level, which you start out with. But the deeper you go in your meditation, the higher your energy has to be for you to attain more and better. And so that comes naturally as you begin to meditate more deeply. And very often, too, people who have been on the path for a while and aren't necessarily getting all the results they want, then they get restless. And they'll come here and say, yeah, it's okay. I think I'll go look for other things. So that's one thing. We noticed a lot of people after the pandemic just weren't coming here anymore. And what happened during the pandemic? Everybody's sitting on their computer, watching YouTube, watching all the Netflix and everything that's there. And this feels really good. Feels really great just sitting on the couch. Oh, there's a satsang. Beep. So it feels really good. Over? Okay, beep. Back to whatever it is. And so did our energy come back? Maybe for some, but I think for others, they got off on other paths, not quite getting what they want out of things. This is not the place to come if you want worldly success. There are no ladders to climb here. This is where you come to meditate and have spiritual family and community together. And you learn to get along with each other Sometimes people will have bad experiences with other devotees, but it's not like they have to be your best friend, you know? Some you'll recognize from lifetimes and go, ah, I recognize you from before. What a relief. Now we can rekindle our friendship we've had all these lifetimes. Others you're like, I remember you. You were in Kurukshetra and on the opposite side of me. And, you know, but we have the opportunity to be able to bypass or rise above those old karmic connections, if any are negative, and start anew. I was in a singing group in Palo Alto. I would say quite a few people in that group, it was a smaller group, it wasn't the big choir, it was a smaller group, did not like each other. You know, there were a few bossy people who were kind of mean to others, just not that aware, but they had beautiful voices. So they were part of the best singing group. And so, okay, but when we sang like angels together. And that bypassed any feeling of animosity that would happen. And also, everyone in that group was a mature devotee, so they understood that even if there were some uncomfortable moments, that was not the thing that mattered most. The music and expressing God's love and Divine Mother's love through that music was the most important thing. And so we united in that and created beautiful vibrations. It wasn't just based on skill. When we're singing together, it is not just skill. There is a channeling of Divine Mother's energy that comes through. And these songs that we sing, the chants, the songs, all of these come from a higher state of mind that Master was in or Swamiji was in. That's why we sing their songs here, because they were both in super consciousness when they wrote those songs. And so, you know, it's not jingle bells, it's Door of My Heart. And these are songs that Master said he touched God when he wrote them. That's why we sing those songs, because they were in the ether as already touching the divine. So back to energy. It's very easy to get stuck in a low energy state and feel as though you can do nothing about it. Because the lower the energy, it kind of snowballs. You have low energy, maybe you're feeling depressed, maybe you're feeling something happened and it affects you, or whatever it is. You have that energy, and it can be very difficult at times to overcome. Sometimes it is karmic, and it is getting you again in this lifetime because you had it before. Master would say this is the time to get over it, not in a judgmental way, but to get through it, I should say, to get through that low energy state, even for the sake of only happiness. Not even for the sake of finding God, if you aren't driven to that, or finding, deep states of meditation. We at least want happiness. We at least want that. The only way to feel happiness is energy up. It's the only way. As soon as our energy is down, that is a clue. We can be spiritual detectives. I'm a spiritual detective. And what's going on with my energy? I don't know. But I feel angry. I feel disappointed. I feel like I'm blaming everybody in life. I feel like my life is the worst. All that kind of stuff is everybody feels. Everybody feels that. It's almost as though there's a script for human beings. When the energy is low, this is how we feel. And it's almost impossible to just by willpower bring ourselves out of that. You know, I've talked about it before, but that state is called the tamasic state. And you cannot go from tamasic to sattvic. What is sattvic? Hangsa, kriya, all those kinds of things. Master did give us energization. That is what can bring us from a more, I don't know. Sometimes you say, I can't even do that. So if you're in a super tamasic state, you're in that. But energization generally can bring us out of that. But if not, then we must absolutely get ourselves off our behinds, stand up and run or do housework or do something that gets our energy up. Otherwise, we are defeated. We will never feel positive. We will never feel happy. Even one memory of feeling positive and happiness means it's possible, right? Even if we've had it only once in our life, it's still possible. So we know it's there. So we have to get off our behinds. If you remember anything from today, you say, I'm off my behind, and I am up and doing something. I'm saying this, I've experienced this a million times. A million times. You know, the spiritual path is not just like this at all. The spiritual path is like this. Hopefully, the average of the curve is going up. But there are times when there's deep downs and then deep ups. And if you want to think about it, all of us on earth are spiritual beings, and we all experience different levels of the ups and downs. So, you know, the way to stop is not what can others give me, or God has made my life terrible. We cannot blame anyone but ourselves. We have to say, I will give myself love and compassion, and I am worth it. And we have to only start from there, because who else is going to give you that? No one. Master even said, you read it over and over again in his writings, the only true unrequited love is God's. And God comes through us. It's not someone else. It's not someone else is going to give us what we want. Ultimately, everyone is a bit motivated by self. There are times when we're incredibly selfless and giving and everything. But actually, it's a little bit of our responsibility to also care for ourselves. We can't only be selfless and give everything away if it's not good for us. We have to also reserve something to take care of ourselves, to say we are okay. I'm okay. I can do this. Give ourselves encouragement. Learn to give ourselves encouragement. It's very important, but you can't do it if the energy is down. So you have to get off the behind, and you have to get up. As soon as you recognize, I'm in a bad mood, what do? We get up. We get up and move the energy. I'm in a bad mood. I feel terrible and hopeless. Get up, take a walk. Do whatever it's going to take to raise the energy. Then energize. And if the energization has helped, as it should, which it always does, then you can sit and meditate. See, you have to rise out of the tamasic state. You got to get into the rajasic state before you can get to the sattvic state. Unless you're really well practiced and you just can easily, maybe when you're slightly moody, you're in like a high tamasic rajasic state, and all you have to do at that state is energize and meditate, and then suddenly you're in a sattvic state again. So, if we can look at our energy levels as in the gunas with tamasic, rajasic, sattvic, and identify, then we know what to do. We can be the spiritual detective. So, this energy level, that makes nothing in life hopeless. Nothing. Because we are responsible for ourselves. and no one else. And Master says this over and over and over again in his writings. And if you don't know it, read more of his stuff. We're all here. We have a library downstairs. Not a library, I should say a bookstore. And if you don't find the book you want there, there's a whole lot of them. You can order from either Amazon or Ananda Publications. We actually have to put another order in because we're low. But, that energy level, we can do it. We can do it. It's possible. And so we have to keep that in mind, that it's possible. So that's the energy side of things. And then Swamiji writes about Judas's life. I think no matter what religion you're from, everybody usually knows the name Judas as a betrayer of somebody. It's not so popular in India, right? Or especially, I think, Tamil Nadu. And we are not Christian at all. Master came to teach the Bhagavad Gita and the true teachings of Christ. He did not come here to push some other religion on anybody, and in fact, we don't agree with any dogmatic religion. Anything that's dogmatic and pushes on people, that's not what we're about here. So you see Christ on the altar, it's because he's one of our gurus. And you read in the autobiography of a yogi that he met with Babaji, and they decided to create the path we're on right now together. And so anyway, imagine, I'm going to tell a bit of the story of Judas, because it's very interesting. It's the story of all of us, because he had a guru whose name happened to be Christ, but he was a guru. That's Master's teachings. He was a guru, and he taught Kriya Yoga. That's Master's teachings. And so imagine ourselves, one of 12 disciples, main disciples, following their guru, but not being quite as aware of their avatar guru. Imagine if we had Master here. Would we be as aware of him? No. Aware of everything he's about? No, because he's an avatar. And the other problem is it was in Kali Yuga. And Kali Yuga was a very materialistic time when the only reality was the skin. What was going on outside? We are our bodies. If I'm tortured, I'm tortured. And there's no getting around it. It's just, that's the end. And so everything was material minded. The only reality, the unseen wasn't real. The only reality was what was seen back then. And it was a very dark time and a very mean time, a cruel time. Just the worst things you can imagine happened during that time. Now, of course, the worst things you can imagine happened this time, but anyway, it was a little bit more par for the course. It was the way things were done back then. And so Christ, that avatar, came at that time to help plant seeds of Dwapara Yuga, so that by the time it got to Dwapara Yuga, Yoganandaji and Babaji and all our gurus came alive and started pushing Dwapara Yuga with the realities of Dwapara Yuga, which we know energy is the way of Dwapara Yuga. But back then, imagine if everybody is just like, no, the only thing that matters is, my material life and the world and what's going on, and, there's nothing beyond, there's nothing unseen. I mean, I know people like that. You talk about meditation with them and they're like, I'm from Kali Yuga. It's not like they were necessarily all like us, except that they had Kriya. And so, okay, there was more consciousness going on there than others probably around there. And so then this guy, their guru, started saying things that went against the organized religion of the time. he started saying of the way things had been. That's the way the people were taking it. And he was saying things like, the kingdom of God is within. Like, what are you talking about? The kingdom of God is within. He was talking about, and there were a few things going on, but he looked basically fine. He still had a sword or a spear thing in his side to show people, I really am a body right now. But he's an avatar. We have the story in Autobiography of a Yogi where Sri Yukteswarji showed up at the train station in form. It's just so exciting. This is things avatars do. And so anyway, he was against this other way of thinking, which was very, at the time, not anymore, I would say, but at the time, that organized religion was corrupt. The priests just wanted money, and they did not want people to go within to get their answers. It was, I tell you when, where, what, who you do. Not, you don't figure that out yourself by going within. I tell you. So stop being independent. We don't like this. If you're independent, then we can't control you. So there was this whole thing going on in that society at the time because it was Kali Yuga. And so imagine you're with your guru and he starts saying these things. Now, if you are a deep disciple, which my guess is these guys were, if they were all chosen to be the main ones, then many of them could understand what was going on. If you have an avatar guru and you're meditating next to him, you're probably having very high states of meditation. You're feeling the presence of God within. So I'd say, a lot of them might be getting that. But even some of them were like, what's going on here? This is feeling a little dangerous. And so Master's story of Judas is that Judas, basically, he was attached to money. He was a thief at times, like Dharmarajan had read. So, a little iffy, but still a great soul, right? According to things, according to Master. But he had this tendency that was not respectable. In any case, he thought, I know better what my guru should do. He's getting into trouble. That's not how you get the message out. I know this guy is great, but the marketing is off. We got to market this guy better, and he's not doing a good job of marketing himself. He's like causing trouble. That's not how you get the message out, right? And I think I know better. Maybe he was a marketing whiz. Who knows? But over time, he worked it out. Meanwhile, the priests at the time, who were so angry with him, tried to get him arrested through the government. And so the government guys talked with Judas, or he talked with them, and he said, I'm going to give him to you. Because he thought, if he just gets a little arrested, then maybe he'll learn his lesson and he'll be able to do the right thing. If he gets into a little bit more trouble, then, okay, that's good enough. Maybe that'll work, on him. Maybe he'll get what he needs to learn his lesson and then be a little more reserved. And, isn't that what everyone needs? You misbehave, you get arrested, and you learn your lesson, right? So, that's the whole part of the whole story where Judas goes up and kisses him on the cheek to let the authorities know that's who he is. And then all heck breaks loose. And so, from there, just terrible torture, and then finally death. And of course, during that death, he is becoming, people could see he was in a higher state, And Master said he used a higher Kriya technique, which we teach here, to leave his body. We do not teach that part. And so, my guess is it works when the time is right. Or we gain some kind of a spiritual ability or something and can do that. In any case, that's something you can get after you get the first Kriya, and you have to wait some years before you can get it. In any case, Christ used that to leave his body when the time was right. He went through the proper, an avatar often does things for the sake of the disciples and the sake of the times. In fact, Swamiji said, for Master, in Autobiography of a Yogi, in a lot of cases, Master talks about, I was a young boy, and I was visiting this saint, and I was visiting that saint, and I learned so much. Master said, very often the saints were asking him for advice, that they were coming to him. But Master did a Leela for his disciples to talk about how you get on the spiritual path, how you learn everything. He wasn't lying, but he was actually, people knew he was an avatar that could perceive that. Does an avatar need advice? I really doubt it. But anyway, he could play the Leela. So in this case, Christ also played the Leela, being tortured through the streets, being nailed to the cross, as people know, and then leaving his body. So that's actually the story of, sorry about that, not necessarily child stuff. So some of you get a holiday called Good Friday. That's the day he had that happen to him when he left the body. Then Easter, which is, they call it the third day, 2 days later. That day was when they found him. And so then that's kind of the celebration that he wasn't his body, that he was saying there's eternal life. And in that religion, it gets changed to all sorts of things, but in the way Master talks about it, of course, an avatar can do whatever he wants. He can get back into his body. He can show the people of Kali Yuga that, look, you're not just your body. So, he also talked about a loving God, which at the time, God was perceived as kind of someone who threw lightning bolts at people and did all sorts of bad things in Kali Yuga. So anyway, maybe a perpetual Shiva or something, continuously breaking things down, except I love Shiva, so it's not a great example. But maybe if Shiva's in a bad mood, maybe a little bit of that. So anyway, it's a story of a devotee. So unfortunately, because of the Good Friday thing, I'll put it that way, Good Friday event that happened, Judas had a realization and felt great shame and then hung himself. And so, Master said of his life, that life, it would have been much better if he had not done that, because as soon as that kind of thing happens, then we're taken over by a darkness. Not necessarily that we're stuck in some lower astral. It just depends. But that we're taken over by a darkness, and it takes a lot of lives to get over that tendency to end your life early. So normally the talk is a little easier to say in front of children, so I apologize. I'm trying not to use all the real words. So in any case, Master said he should have done that, and he would have taken some time off of the rebirths. So what happened? Which ashram was it? It wasn't Ramana Maharshi, was it? Yeah, Ramakrishna's, modern day to those of us who are above 50 or 60, Ramakrishna's ashram, Master visited, and, right, it was Master who visited, right. So he visited, and who was there? The soul inside a new body with a new name of Judas. And so that was 2,000 years later. Now, we can't judge time. When you're in the astral, you really don't know how long it is before you incarnate, you know. But still, to any of us, we would say, wow, 2,000 years is a long time. And who knows what he was dealing with. And so at that time also, the fellow disciples of Judas were teasing him about his attachment to money still. And Ramakrishna said, be quiet, don't do that, because, you know, he's doing his best, or whatever he said. And so then Master said he was going to attain liberation in that life. So, okay, the end of a big full circle thing. But still, you can see that's an example, that's actually an extreme example of a devotee who had some desires, who had some opinions, who felt he knew better than his guru, who then went down the wrong road. So that's just one example of a devotee falling. And it's you know, that's why his name lives in infamy now, or people will use that, his name as a verb even. So, so anyway, on the upside, I wanted to add a quote from Master. You know, Master did these beautiful commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, and we have it in the book, The Essence of the Bhagavad Gita. We have the small version, which is this, just the Bhagavad Gita, and that just has the stanzas through all the chapters. And then he wrote Essence of the Bhagavad Gita, which I highly recommend, because you can read even just one page a day. Of course, it'll take a long time to get through that, but still, one page of inspiration a day of that Bhagavad Gita, it's just blessed. Okay, so this is just hope, even though next week the topic is how devotees rise. So this was why devotees fall, and that's how devotees rise. So that'll be the emphasis instead of the more possibly depressing topic. So, the Gita says, in this path of action, there is no loss of the unfinished effort for realization, nor is there creation of opposite effects. Even a tiny bit of this real religion protects one from the great fear of birth and death. And Master wrote, the above stanza of the Bhagavad Gita spells a great encouragement to all devotees who have entered the spiritual path but are discouraged to go on further due to not receiving tangible results from the very beginning. In the material world, all successes are known by their tangible, though short-lasting, results. But on the spiritual path, all results, being primarily psychological, are intangible. The devotee must know that though spiritual results are intangible, they are real, in that they are everlastingly beneficial to the soul and gradually also to the body. So that means even when we're meditating and we're not feeling much, something is going on with the soul. The soul knows we're meditating. And usually we see indirect results, don't we? We start meditating, and it's not that we're in bliss, but suddenly life feels a little more harmonious. Suddenly we feel slightly more happy, you know, and then the happiness grows and grows. And of course, add energy to that. When a devotee advances, the spiritual devotee must realize that spiritual results must be measured according to their peace-giving qualities. For example, when a devotee meditates properly and deeply, he is bound to feel an ever-increasing peace, which after all is more precious than all the possessions of the world. To be able to maintain peace within, in spite of the ever-changing circumstances of life, is to be happier than a king who may be buried in misery amid outwardly favorable circumstances. When a devotee advances very far, this inner peace becomes the tangible consciousness of omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence. Then the devotee knows he can control the switch which runs the factory of cosmic creation. The stanza signifies that in following the spiritual path of action and right methods of meditation, there is no waste of any spiritual effort made to know God, even if one does not persevere further. It is said by saints that if a person even once really desires salvation, that desire will be firmly planted in the subconscious and superconscious minds and will wait there, no matter how long ignored, to germinate when the circumstances of favorable opportunity arises in this life or in a later incarnation. So hopefully that puts a little upturn on the potential of falling, which nobody in this room is doing. So God bless you.